Welcome to the latest episode of The Entrepreneur's Ethic. Today we are joined by Craig Rupp, founder and CEO of Sabanto. Thanks for being with us, Craig.
Thank you, Kevin.
Craig has spent years building at the frontier of autonomous agriculture, helping pioneer systems that allow tractors to operate autonomously in real production environments. Before Sabanto, Craig played a foundational role in the creation of FieldView at Climate Corporation, a technology that became central to modern precision agriculture and ultimately part of Monsanto's acquisition of Climate for roughly $1 billion. So we'll do a little bit of a dive into that because that's a seminal moment, perhaps for you and for Climate, but for what we now call agtech. So Craig's career sits at the intersection of agriculture, engineering, and software and entrepreneurship. Today we'll talk about the origins of FieldView, lessons from building hard technology companies, what autonomy changes economically for agriculture, and where he believes the future of farming is headed. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Well, if you don't mind us turning on a little bit of the Wayback Machine, let's start with the FieldView story. What problem were you originally aiming to solve, and how did it evolve into what eventually became such a transformative product for agriculture?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting story, and it goes back to when I moved to Iowa, I took a job with John Deere, and I developed their Starfire receiver and also their Green Star display. And I did that for a number of years, and then my background, believe it or not, is in cellular wireless. And I was working with Apple on their iPad, and the iPad in my mind, it's a cell phone with just a big screen. And I'm looking at this device, and I just saw the graphics, the memory, the power, battery powered, the communications, cellular, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, all the applications on it. And I just couldn't get out of my mind. This is what the Green Star display should have been at Deere. And I carried that idea around with me for about 2 years. And, I would go up. It was kind of funny. A bunch of my friends of mine that worked at Motorola and I every year we would go up to the Upper Peninsula and go snowmobiling. And, sit in a bar at night and go snowmobiling during the day. And a friend of mine, Corbett, he and I, we started companies. We left Motorola and started companies. So we were kind of entrepreneurial. And
you're on the edge of communication.
And
computing, really.
Yeah, and I said, this iPad, this is what we should do something in agriculture. And use an iPad. Instead of using a Green Star display, let's knock off a John Deere 2630 Green Star display on an iPad. That was really what we wanted to do. And, it took me, about 2 years, of convincing him. And then he and I just decided, all right, we're going to do it. And so we started a company called 640 Labs. And my brother happened to have an 8R tractor. And I saw that little ISO port on it. And I thought, I know all the data on that port. If I can get that into an iPad, and then it's up into the cloud, and then we could process it. So that was really the beginning of the 640 drive, which became eventually the FieldView drive, which is kind of a mainstream product in agriculture today. But that's how it all started.
Okay. And if I turn back my Wayback Machine, I may get off by a year, but we took students from Iowa State University to Silicon Valley, perhaps 2011.
Okay.
And so Vinod Khosla was kind enough to provide some introductions to companies that he had invested in, one of which was then called Weatherbill, which became Climate.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting, not in their eventual office, but their first office in San Francisco.
Yeah, 3rd Street.
Yeah. And they, at that time, were using their Google data engineering skills very impressively, but they had taken crop and yield data and were designing insurance products, or what they hoped to be insurance products. And so it's a bit of a fuzzy memory, but I asked them, bring up up one of your policies for Adams County, Nebraska, which is where I grew up. My brother farms,
Yeah.
and I own some farmland. And so they had some sort of a policy. It was something like, if it doesn't rain an inch and a half between May 1st and June 15th, you get this kind of a payout. And I don't remember what it was, but I remember looking at it and I'm like, there's something wrong with your numbers. I was being a bit flip, I suppose. But they're
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? Like, we've run this through machine learning and data science and whatever. I'm like, I bet 60 to 70% of the years it doesn't rain an inch and a half during that time, but we've got center pivot irrigation and like we're still going to make a crop. Like, I will buy this at the price you showed me all day long. Anyway,
Yeah.
like all startups, Weather Bill had a ways to go. Can you trace us kind of, at least insofar as you understand, when you came into the picture, kind of how they,
Well, okay.
how you came to work with them and how?
Yeah, it was a really interesting story, or the way it just panned out. So this was the order of events. Monsanto buys Precision Planting, and I sat back and I thought, why on God's green earth is a seed company buying Precision Planting? And then soon afterwards, they acquired the Climate Corporation, right, for $1 billion.
Yeah.
So it was a unicorn, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are, data analytics, And here we were collecting data, and we were touting ourselves as a data analytics company, because that was the hot thing at the time. It's like AI now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you put together a pitch deck, you better have that,
You have to
AI
have data
in it.
analytics.
Yeah,
back
because
then.
that's what all the investors are. At the time, data analytics. That's what all the investors were looking for. So we touted ourselves as being a data analytics company, and then the climate. We saw that acquisition, and then it dawned on me. Monsanto at the time, was looking for data, all the planting data that came off of the Precision Planting, is going, they want access to that data so they can make better products and whatnot, and then so climate, so there it was just, from what I heard, it's kind of difficult, to get, you need a farmer. You have to buy a 2020. You have to buy, their seed meters, and it's like a, $10,000-$12,000 investment to switch over a farmer to get him onto the quote climate system. And then meanwhile, here's this little company in Chicago, in Ames, that is making this little drive, which is cheap. The cogs were, it was like under $25. It was cheap to make this little thing. And, literally, if you open it up, there's just a microprocessor in there, and a little Bluetooth module and an SD card. That's it. Nothing, and it's all commoditized. It's very cheap. Matter of fact, when I was at Climate, the box and the manual cost more than the device itself. It was just, but this is a very inexpensive way of capturing data, getting it up to the cloud. And Friedberg at Climate saw this and said, Eureka, this is what we're going to do. And then they looked at us, and they, believe it or not, we met. The first acquisition talks were right across the street from here at the Iowa Stater. And we were at the restaurant there, and they said, we're really interested in acquiring you because, we like what you're doing. And, and it was funny. We kind of had an identity crisis because we thought of ourselves as a data analytics company, and the day we got acquired, I learned what we really were. We were a data acquisition company.
Okay, you had the data that they needed.
Yeah, and we didn't. It's funny. We never. we never touted ourselves as being an experts in data acquisition. And it's kind of funny if you look at our background. Corbett, wireless. Me, wireless. We had Brad Bakke, he was wireless. We had Pat Dumpstorff, he's a wireless guy. It was all ex-Motorola guys. All ex-Motorola guys. So we all knew radios, and we spent 20 plus years in the wireless communications industry. Corbett and I started a data company in Oklahoma. So we were really communications type. That was our specialty, and we were really good at data acquisition. I worked for National Instruments, data acquisition company, and when we got acquired, I'm like, oh my God, we're not a data analytics company, we're a data acquisition company, and that was the story of that.
So it sounds like you had an understanding that you were in a hot area, let's say, and could be an acquisition target. Did it surprise you? Were you welcoming? Did it take you a while when Freeburg came knocking?
It took, the company was in existence, less than 2 years, about 18 months. I mean, it was 18 months. We had prototypes. We were out there. We were in production. We were selling them. We only had about 200 in the market at the time, and what's funny is, decisions that were made early on, it was really just common sense to us. It's like, okay, we want something that, doesn't require a technician to install. It's very simple. It's cheap, low cost, and then it interfaces with the iPad. And I chose Bluetooth because there's various communications reasons for that, frequency hopping and interference and whatnot. So it just made a lot of sense at the time, the decisions we made, and then it turns out that's what really made us attractive. Is we just had an exceedingly low cost way of getting data up into the cloud across various agnostic. I don't care if it was Deere, Case AGCO, Kubota. It doesn't matter. We got data up and off that machine.
And is it fair to say that became the key cog in the engine that became Climate Corp?
Actually, it was. I think I was reading. Who the number one largest data warehouse, agriculture data warehouse. Everyone's on Amazon, right? But the data is it's John Deere Operations Center. Number 2 is FieldView.
Okay.
And that data, the majority of that data came through the drive. Last I heard, it's somewhere around 200 million acres of data flowed through that little device. Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure you told that story the first time I met, and I hadn't put all the pieces together, and it doesn't surprise me necessarily to learn that, there's an 18-month-old company that built the product that became like the growth engine, essentially, by the company. But it's just a great, I love those sorts of stories.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Wasn't planning on that, because when you start a company, you're looking 6 months. I'm like, where the hell are we going to be in 6 months from now? I mean, are we even going to be around? Yeah. Is this gonna are we going to make it? I have no idea. Looking back though, and I'm probably getting into probably questions you'll later ask me, but there were some key decisions along the way that made us successful, and we stuck to our guns, and it was there's a good video out there about Steve Jobs, the ability of saying no. I mean, there were so many times when we were presented, what could be some really interesting opportunities.
By like large companies?
Yeah, it's I'll give you an example. We're talking to all these large ag retailers, and they like what we were doing, and they're like, this is really interesting. However, we want you on our trucks, not tractors. We want you on our trucks. And we came close to doing it, but we said it's not ag. It's not ag enough. We want to be on tractors and combines and applicators and whatnot. And I just look back and thank God we had the wherewithal, and discipline to say no. But that was just kind of an interesting story along the way.
Well, you mentioned Steve Jobs, certainly a transformative and famous entrepreneur, but David Freeberg has come up with his own fame.
Oh yeah,
on the All In podcast, which is
and
just ahead of the Entrepreneur's Ethic in the ratings. But
yeah, he was on the Jeopardy as well. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
He was a Jeopardy contestant.
Anyway, I have never met him, but some people who have describe him as an interesting and neat person.
Yeah, he's pretty eclectic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask what your take is for our listeners.
Nice guy. He's very strategic. Plays a lot of bridge.
That does say something about a person,
I
doesn't
think
it?
he likes whiskey, and yeah, he's South African. Yeah. So he and Elon are cut from the same cloth.
That I did not know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, he's a really nice guy.
There is something about some of those folks emerging from South Africa. There's a certain scrappiness and just sort of way that they look at the world, I think, in realistic, hard-bitten ways.
Yeah. Along that line, you see a lot of immigrants that come to the U.S. and they succeed. And I think, people who, the younger people in the, I'm looking at you, Aaron, sorry. There's so many opportunities around you. You just don't notice them. Whereas, you come from a country with lacking opportunities. They come here and they call it the land of opportunity. And I think if, we're surrounded by it and it's just noise to us, but, there's some great opportunities in this country that I think the people that are from the country don't necessarily see that.
Well, and an almost desperation to pursue an opportunity and make good of it. Just that grit and hustle and want to.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, so acquisition happens. You end up at Climate. Tell us a little bit about that part of your journey at Climate, what you learned as you got to ramp your product.
Yeah, so that was kind of an interesting transition because in the Midwest, the way we run startups and the way they were running Climate, that startup, 100% different, right? Catered meals, it was kind of a...
Lost some of those Midwestern frugality habits?
Yeah, they it was pretty posh in that aspect. But I work closely with the DeKalb seed dealers and just the seed and the seed dealers throughout the United States. And the one thing that I really learned from Monsanto, part of Climate's under Monsanto, but I worked with a lot with the Climate people and then with the Monsanto people. But I thought what was really fascinating was, and the thing I learned was the sales and marketing channel in agriculture is completely different than anything you've ever seen before. And I've seen some companies, and I'm like, they're trying to be they claim we're going to be the Amazon of agriculture. And I'm like, you have no idea. Agriculture is a relationship business, right? I mean, no farmer is going to buy a seed today, and I don't know how I can't answer if this is ever going to be possible, but every farmer must know their seed dealer. They must know their equipment dealer. They must know when they buy something, they want to buy it off a person, and and I was engrossed in that type of environment, and I really learned a lot about how to sell and market, and just how they interface with their customers and whatnot. I'm an engineer, so my background, by the way, I don't have an MBA. I'm just a lowly electrical engineer who worked on like wireless stuff. I could tell you about spectral emissions and out of band rejection and blocking and all this technical stuff, and I had no idea, just the sales and the marketing. And we used to always write, engineers, they're pretty pretentious. It's just sales and marketing. Yeah, right.
It's kind of important.
Oh, it's really important. Matter of fact, it's like one of the most important
and I agree, in
aspects
agriculture,
of the business.
Those relationships and the networks of trust are such a big deal. And of course it isn't any human endeavor, but it is bigger. And I wonder what your thoughts are on why that might be amped up a little bit more in agriculture than perhaps some other industries. And I don't want to at all say agriculture special or whatever, but I think there is a uniqueness there, and you're getting at part of it. Where do you think that arises from?
That's a really good question. I'm just thinking out loud here. I think I think maybe what's interesting is especially in a startup. So I'm gonna add to your question, or the mystique of your question. I get asked a lot, well, why aren't you guys going direct? And I'm like, well, we have a dealer network, and we established a dealer network, and we have 14 dealers across the United States. And we go into an area. The first thing we look for is a competent dealer to represent us, to support us, and whatever, right? And, I get the question, well, why don't you go direct? I'm like, well, okay, wait a second. John Deere doesn't go direct. AGCO doesn't go direct. CNH doesn't go direct. Nobody goes direct. They all go through dealers, right? Okay, so what do you know that they don't know? And I'm not saying that, but there's something there that, nobody goes direct. They always go through dealers. And I think, I think in agriculture, I think farmers, they like to know who they're buying their stuff from. And when I buy something from you, right, there's an obligation that you have to stand, behind whatever you sold me. And I mean, that type of mindset is saturating. Is saturated throughout agriculture.
I agree. And you've been in the startup world, and of course there's a leap of faith element to startups that's substantial.
Oh yeah.
But in agriculture, it's kind of the same.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And there's the thing from the New Testament, we put seeds in the ground and we don't understand why they grow into plants. We understand more today, like a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
But I have a cousin who farms, and in his Christmas letter that he writes each year, he says, I'm still doing the same thing. I put a seed in the ground and it comes up, and I don't know why. But I'm glad that it does.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that sort of emanates out into how we treat our human relationships as well, as an element at least.
One company I started, one of my partners in the company, I remember having a beer with him one time, and he said, when we started the company, he said, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. He's like, my father started a body shop, and he was talking about his uncles and whatever. And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, my dad started farming, and all my uncles started farming and whatnot. And it just dawned on me, I think, farmers are entrepreneurs. And, they're starting a business. And it's a lifestyle business, but I mean, they're starting a business, and they're no different than you or I.
No, I mean, we say starting a business is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And
Yeah.
I, like you, have started technology businesses, and that's hard.
That's crazy.
But you can get to a certain point, right? And you've, as with yours, climate comes calling, and your company gets acquired. Farming, hopefully you get some level of success, but markets, weather, pestilence,
markets, weather.
There's a lot of things working against your success.
Yeah. In their capital, their land, and whatever is their 401k.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how that works out.
Well, zoom us to the start of your current company and autonomy.
I was at the Climate Corporation, and it was probably 2017, 2018. I asked to start an autonomy group. And I just said, give me two other guys, and we just want to go out and we want to start doing autonomy inside of climate. And I was told no. I'm like, oh. And then, believe it or not, Bayer buys Monsanto, and then, and this is odd, I decided to come back to Iowa State and finish my PhD. I was always chipping away at it, and I thought, I could see myself putting me out to pasture and being some professor, teach some, low-level class, and get the tweed coat with the elbow patches and whatnot. And so I came back to Iowa State, and I was a full-time PhD student.
That's when I met you.
Yeah, and then I saw something shiny. I kind of have ADHD, so my attention. I just started thinking about autonomy again. And I decided I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to deploy an autonomous planter in 2019, the spring of 2019. I don't know why I chose that, but it's the hardest thing. And I thought soybeans, and then what I did was I leased a 4220 JCB tractor. And I went and I bought, believe it or not, I never thought I'd ever buy a planter, but I bought an 18-row planter.
Well, they wouldn't let you lease one, so.
No, I couldn't lease one. And then I had a 389 Peterbilt. I've got a CDL because I'm like, someone's got to drive this rig. So I went looking for a person. And then I thought, how hard it is to get to find someone to drive a truck. And I'm like, this is going to happen. I'm going to have to do it myself. So I went and got a CDL and
from PhD classes to CDL license.
Yeah, and it was. And then I went out in 2019, and it was pretty hard. This is probably the craziest thing I've done. But I went out and I planted in Iowa. Started in Sac City, Iowa. And then I went to Nebraska, and then up in Minnesota, and then I headed to Illinois, and then Indiana. It was kind of fun. I had this vision, and you know how it is. You have these wild ideas. I'm like, I'm going to start in Texas, and we're going to work our way up to Minneapolis or Minnesota.
Very systematic.
Yeah, and then I had the Syngenta helped me find farmers, and that was, the farmers signed up for it. And some nutcase is going to come by with a tractor and plant their soybeans. I wasn't even charging them. I'm like, I'll do it for free. I just want to see if you'll let me.
I was going to ask why. They're like, somebody will plant my soybeans for free, and I get to watch a robot on my field, kind of a thing.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, they'll sign up for that. Yeah. Oh, they were all lined up. I picked them talk to them and then selected just a few. I wanted to do them all, but I just didn't have time. And
Well, the fact that you went to as many states as you did tells me that, anyway, everything didn't break, at least all at once.
no, it didn't.
So what did you learn the first year?
How exceedingly difficult it was going to be.
Okay.
And, it was, at the time the software was, there was no user interface. It was all command line, and it was, command line interface, CLI interface. The path planning was exceedingly difficult. The monitoring the system, detecting for errors. We had a remote. We could remotely monitor the seeding population and whatnot. But if something happened, like let's say one of the rows got plugged, we would continue on. You had to physically stop it. And we just learned a lot of, it was hard. It was exceedingly hard to do.
So you said you came into this with conviction around the idea of autonomy. Obviously, that conviction lasted through that first hard year. Could you still, in spite of all the challenges, see the through line to being able to overcome those challenges and how difficult it was to build even that first version of your product?
That's an interesting question. I always refer back. There's this picture on the internet. Google it. I think it's called the pit of despair for startups. And you start off thinking this is the best idea ever, and this is going to be really cool. And then you find out how hard it is, and you're like, God, this is really hard. And then you go into the pit of despair. And we were in the pit of despair.
Kind of the combo of how hard it is, but also will anybody actually ever buy this, even if we do make it?
Yeah. Yeah. And what happens is you go down a path and you're kind of committed. Like I closed a round. I closed a financing round, right? And my first round I closed, the investors, right? They had expectations from me, and I went down the path, and I'm like, these people depend on me, and these people that I hired, you think about it, they left perfectly fine jobs, right, to join this, and and they had this conviction that this is a good idea. I'm going to leave I left a perfectly fine paying job, and I'm joining this guy who wanted to do this and whatnot. So me personally, I'm like, there's a lot of people depending upon me, right?
You give me a flashback to when at my first company, eMarkets, we started to have some success. We brought in investor money, started to hire up, and we had a Christmas party. Things were going well. But I walk into the room and we're at maybe 40 people in the company.
Yeah.
Most of them have a guest at this party. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Except me.
Yeah.
Because, you look at it that way.
You know what's going on.
Everybody left good position. Some people moved. So some of the spouses in the room gave up a better job to move to Iowa from some other state that they might have preferred to have stayed in. Oh, God.
I know it is.
Welcome.
It
Merry
keeps you up at
Christmas.
night, doesn't it? Oh my God. God, we were out in the field one time. God, this is okay. We had a God. We had a I don't know. We came. It was like a 88 or no, it was not even. It was like a 30-acre field, right? That we had to plant, right? And we could do like 10 foot wide, 5 mile an hour. We do about 5 acres per hour, 6 hours. So I'm like, all right, give us, we got there, it'll probably take us 8 because we'll screw around, right? 30-acre field, it's not going to take long. We got there. It was midnight. And we had only done like maybe 5 acres of this field. And we went back with our tail between our legs. And I remember all of us, we were sleeping in a basement And I remember I went to bed at midnight, 12:30. I remember I woke up at 4:30, and I'm just laying in bed going, what in the hell did I get myself into? I mean,
Take me to your leader.
I'm the leader. I've got 5 guys, again, that left perfectly fine paying jobs to join this, to do this. And I know when I wake up in the morning, I know it's going to go through their mind.
What am I doing?
I made a grave mistake. And, and then, internally I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. What am I? And I remember I sat down with everyone. I just said, listen, you knew this wasn't going to be easy. We're fine. Just continue on. It's going to get better. Okay. And I know we need to do this and this and this. And I know we need another, we've got to spend a lot more time developing and fixing things and making it, foolproof, or, just tightening it up and making it rock solid, but we'll get there. You have to be a coach, and you have to make sure everyone, their hopes are high.
Yeah, those moments, coach, I think is a good word. It's like, what did we learn? What can we do better? How do we take the next step?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's all you can do.
But going back, the pit of despair, oh my God, we were in that probably a year and a half.
Okay.
I'm like, I laid in bed too, wondering who is ever going to buy an autonomous tractor.
Okay. Did you, during that pit of despair, you talked about worrying about employees, but you also mentioned bringing on investors. So you've got people's money that's on the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did they do, or how did you manage those relationships through the pit of despair?
My investors, you have to be transparent, right? Mm-hmm. Investors don't like surprises. And so I tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I'm transparent with them on that aspect. And when I talk about the bad and the ugly, they're not a complaint department. So I tell them, this is a problem, this is what I'm doing, and I expect to be fixed by such and such a date. So I'm completely transparent to them.
Yep.
I don't want them to find out later that, you withhold information and then it won't end well with you.
Yeah. So tell us the story of climbing out of that pit of despair.
We were, we ran a unit 24 hours a day, nonstop. And I'm like, oh my God, we finally have something.
That was like a key moment.
It was a key moment, yeah. There was defining moments. It's kind of interesting. There was defining moments throughout the company. It's just, it totally changed the company. Just these little things, like when we ran 24 hours, nonstop. I mean, this thing was out there, and then, it's like laying in bed, and I'm laying in bed, looking on my phone, watching this little tractor out there just chug along. I'm like, oh my goodness, finally. But along, and it's not just necessarily, getting a term sheet or, getting an investor in, or, a partnership with another company. It's just these little defining moments that really set the course of the company.
Well, and there's been a lot more of those moments for each of us, probably in the era of AI, of realizing this machine will work nonstop with our commands.
Yeah, scary, isn't it?
It is, but you're in the physical world, not just bytes, and making that happen. And how should we think about the promise of autonomy in agriculture and kind of where it's going? And in some small ways, I think of the story of the mechanization of agriculture, the digitization, at least of small parts of agriculture, is like autonomy, but yeah, companies like yours are next level, if that's not
Yeah.
too much of an exaggeration. I don't think that it is.
So I'm a big, I guess, proponent of, and I've said this, millions of times. I see a future of equipment getting smaller. And I look at it like, and I give this example, and so it's kind of long and drawn out, but there's a correlation. When Thomas Edison, he's known for the phonograph, and if you look at the phonograph. Edison's real breakthrough was the ability to play back audio, right? 30 years prior to him playing back audio, they knew how to record audio. They didn't know how to play it back. And Thomas Edison figured out how to do it, right? And the phonograph was an application of that breakthrough. So everyone, credits him for developing the phonograph. No. What he invented was the ability to play back audio, right? And you look around you, that recording device, your cell phone, AM, FM radio, record companies, all the band genres and whatnot, all came from that breakthrough idea. So when you look at autonomy and it's like, oh, yeah, it's going to solve the labor problem, that's an application of it. Really, it's physical AI, right? And and look at what it's going to do in terms of how it's going to change the industry. And I look at if you look at what autonomy actually does is it increases now I can buy I have an additional worker. So what it's doing is it's expanding time, right?
Yep.
And if you look at James Watt, horsepower equals work divided by time. Work and horsepower are inversely proportional. You increase time, you decrease horsepower. You decrease time, you increase for the same amount of work, right? And as an example, if you have a 400 horsepower tractor running 12 hours a day, a 200 horsepower tractor working 24 hours a day will do the same amount of work. Or two 200 horsepower tractors will do the same amount of work as a 400. In theory, right? So, I see a future where, unfortunately, if you look at the cost per horsepower, it's not linear. You get above 250, 500 horsepower, it's
The
exponential.
curve starts to bend.
It bends. And I see a future with smaller systems running longer hours. And it's scalable, it's redundant, there's a secondary market. I have a 10,000 acre farmer with, 4 little systems, right? He can sell one of his little systems to a guy farming 1,000 acres, right? You take a 830 horsepower tractor, who's the second buyer for that? I mean, it's really tough. They're more fuel efficient. They're better for the soil. It's the list goes on. And I look at the this large equipment that you see today. I look at it and I'm like, this reminds me of the 70s. You're old enough to remember that, right?
Yep.
Remember IBM and their big mainframe computers?
Yeah.
And this crazy guy, Bill Gates, said, there's going to be a day when there's a personal computer in every office and
Every
home. And everyone thought he was crazy. And here we are.
Carrying them in our pockets.
There's like 6 of them sitting on this table right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's a rather fundamental vision, a fundamental different vision from what the world looks like today.
yeah, it is. And
I mean, equipment's bigger.
yeah.
We like to show off the big, shiny objects that we buy as human beings. But you talk about the moment of watching your first machine run for 24 hours straight.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of a moment like that for a farmer? Like, I was in bed and my machine was running, or my machines were running, and that's better than owning something big and shiny.
Yeah, it is. You know, I tell my engineers this and the sales guy, everyone in the company this. You will never work on anything. I'll bet you will never work on anything in your career which compels people to pull out their phone and take a video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I've worked on some really cool radios, and I've never been compelled to pull out. I've never seen anyone, oh, this is such a beautiful power supply. You know, I'm going to take a picture of it. No, nobody does that. However, you deploy an autonomous tractor, every farmer, the first time they see it, and they sit by the side of the field thinking, you know, my grandfather or grandparents, grandmother and father, or great-grandmother, father, homesteaded this land and worked it with horses, and now I'm deploying an autonomous tractor on their land. And I'm going to take a video of it.
Yeah. It is a good marker of you've done something good in the world, right? Somebody takes a picture of it or takes a video of it.
Yeah. Or, you know, cars go by and they'll stop.
And they stop and then
jump
take videos
out.
of it.
Yeah, take a video of it, or the police show up. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's fun in that aspect.
It's a way back flashback. But I'm in high school. My brother, who's 8 years younger and farms today, was starting to drive tractors. He was a very ambitious, very young guy. So he gets on his first, probably John Deere 4640.
Okay, nice tractor in its day.
Mid-1980s. Nice tractor for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's seat back, probably about like this. Comes up a little bit in the back. And so my grandfather was behind the tractor with one of his buddies pointing, because when the tractor would go away, you couldn't see my brother's head. It was below. So it looked, for all the life of you, from behind, like a tractor driving itself. Anyway, 40 years later, you have it going on.
Oh, yeah.
Tractors driving themselves. What's it mean for the industry? You know, we probably overuse the concept of disruption.
Yeah.
We have great innovative companies that occupy spaces, but they know how to make what's called and is big iron.
Well, I think big iron days are numbered. It's going to be big silicon. And that's just, I mean, that's just progression, right?
Well, and I guess people say the same thing about the emerging automobiles. People don't buy, they don't want what we used to call cars. They want smartphones with wheels.
I've said this before. There's going to be a day when we're going to look back and we're going to say, can you believe people dedicated a portion of their house? It was called a garage. And they parked these vehicles in it, right? You know how big a garage is? I got a 3-car garage. It's massive. If that was living area, I don't know what I'd do with it, right?
It'd be kind of fun to find out.
Yeah, but there's going to be a day when, you know, houses will not have garages because you don't need one.
No, my typical commute between my acreage north and west of Ames and a research park office here is 5.5 miles. If I could push a button and have a car pick me up and drop me off, and then at the end of the day, I do that all the time.
I know there people do enjoy driving or racing and stuff like that, but I just think there will be a day.
Yeah. Well, Craig, I typically conclude with 3 questions about decision making. The entrepreneur's ethic is a framework about how people like you, entrepreneurs, make decisions.
Okay.
And so the first one is, what's an example of a practical decision you've made that in hindsight was important?
Okay. We hire a lot of young people, and when they come in the company, what we do is they do a stint as a V&V engineer, verification and validation engineer. And what they do then is they test our software, okay? And instead of going through training, that is part of their training regimen.
Make them do it.
Make them do it. And why? They know what works. They know what doesn't work. They know what, engineers are struggling on getting to work. They learn about all the engineers. If I want to talk to the embedded guy, I need to talk to Adam. If I need to talk to, so then what happens is it's a great training path for training for my engineers and just a lot of people in the company.
And get to know people in the company and what they do and why they do it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. What's an example of a principled decision you've made that in hindsight was important?
So there's a lot of principles and tenets in the company. I have, there's a lot of sayings that I repeat. One of them is don't build a church for Easter Sunday, right? If you've ever been around, especially software engineers or even hardware any engineer, it needs to be perfected, and they overthink it.
Perfected for the biggest possible crowd load.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And then, they don't realize you don't need to build a cathedral for Easter Sunday. You just have to build a door that opens. And, so I constantly remind people of that. The second thing is, there's a Moneyball quote that I live by. If we play like the Yankees in here, we're going to lose to the Yankees out there. And I need to do something different. I can't do the same as what Deere, Case, and AGCO and some of the large OEMs are doing. I need to do something different, and I need to disrupt their industry. And so that's why we're focused on smaller horsepower, longer hours. And not every farmer will be our customer, but I think there's a heck of a lot of them out there that will be. And so, we've been laser focused on doing that. And there were principles early on. I'm going to leverage what's on the shelf. So I'm not going to go out and build a new tractor. There's a lot of autonomy companies, and hats off to them. They're out there building these custom machines that are completely bespoke or custom, and I get it, and hats off to them. Anybody who's crazy enough to do this, I admire. But it's always we're using off the shelf tractors,
Taking existing tractors and making them autonomous.
Yep.
Yeah, that is great. Does your teaching occur through sayings like that for the most part? Or are there things written on your wall? Or you talk about how principles and values are communicated. What are your primary forms of that communication?
Communications?
Yeah, of things like don't build the church for Easter crowds.
Oh, for Easter Sunday.
For Easter Sunday. Is it sayings like that you like to use to try to coach that in culturally into your team?
Yeah. I'll be in a meeting and why isn't this done? We said, June 15th, we need to be in Cartersville, Georgia. And, we're doing this. I'm like, are you building a church for Easter Sunday? What's going on? So no, I use that all the time. There's a lot of sayings that I do. The other thing, I'll go back to a practical decision I make too. Is when I hire someone, I give them how to win friends and influence people. Uh-huh. We have a recommended reading list. That is the number one book.
That's the number one book on it.
And what I do is, first day of work, I hand them a book.
Okay.
Say, read this. And then, a couple months later, I'll say, so what'd you think about, the beehive, and see if they read it.
Give a little quiz.
Yeah. I'm like, you didn't read it, did you? No, I haven't. I'm like, you better read it. Okay. And I'm doing it because you're going to have a heck of a career if you read this book and you follow it. Just going to let you know.
Yeah.
If you don't read it, then, it's your fault.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make sure you read it.
All right. And the third, what's an example of a weird or whimsical decision you've made that in hindsight was important?
I don't know if you've ever, you probably have noticed this. There's this kind of pirate theme with our company.
Yeah, like on your
Logo.
page or whatever, you're called like Chief Pirate or something.
Yeah. There's this, and it was whimsical, and it was, I was watching another. Speaking of Steve Jobs, he was talking about innovation and branding at Apple, and he went into the company Nike. Okay, you've seen Nike's ads. Have you ever seen them advertise their product? They never advertise their shoes, how great they are. They never.
They advertise human achievement.
Exactly. What they do is they elevate the athlete and their performance. Right?
Yeah.
And I thought, I never thought of that. And so the pirate theme. Pirates they go into uncharted waters. And they don't follow the status quo, and and that's the culture of our company. That's who we are.
Okay.
Right? And it just so happens that's what our customers are as well. I mean, all our customers, if you think about it, have you ever read Jeffrey Moore, another book, recommended book, Crossing the Chasm?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You see that? That's exactly early majority, late
Yeah, it
majority.
is. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. All our customers are they're the early adopters and the innovators. They're the guys right on the left side, right before the chasm, and that's who they are. They're just like us. They want to change the world. I'm going to be the first guy in the county to have an autonomous tractor, and I'm going to show all these farmers just who the hell I am and whatnot. And so, and it just took off. And these farmers, I mean, we had a farmer, this recently, there was a storm came through, and every system we sell comes with a little pirate flag.
Oh, that is great.
The Jolly Rogers flag, right? And he lost his flag. And you'd swear his wife died. He was like, I don't know what to do. I've searched for it for 2 hours. I can't find it. And I'm like, Corey, I'll send you another one.
Did you comp him another flag?
I just got him a flag. I'm like, this guy he spent 2 hours looking for it. And a couple of them, a couple of our customers said, don't ever stop that. That is just the coolest thing ever. And, pirate.
So do you find fellow pirates, or do pirates find one another?
They find one another. They do. They, agriculture.
Walk into the proverbial bar and you can spot one another across the room.
Have you ever noticed in agriculture? I swear to God, the degrees of separation is 2. I can get to anyone in the United States through 2 people in agriculture. There's 6 degrees of separation. In agriculture, it's 2. It is.
I think Iowa State in agriculture is 1.5.
1.5. Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah. It's just, and what happens is, these farmers talk amongst themselves, and then I mean, if we sell a system in one location, there's going to be 3 or 4 next year, because one will talk and tell his friends, oh, this is, these guys really, this is really cool, and this is how it works, so on and so forth. And then, it just balloons from there. And I mean, and again, it's relationships.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Well, Craig, thanks for being with us. Any final bits of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs? Given some good book ideas?
Well, read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie, Dale Carnegie.
Yes.
It's an awesome book. There's another book, Crossing the Chasm. That's kind of an interesting book too. Jeffrey Moore, I think it is. Like in agriculture, focused on a problem, solve a problem. That's obvious, right? You're going to start a company or do something, solve a problem. The other thing too is there's 2 types of problems. There's what I'll say, more realistic problems, right? And then there's ones that are audacious, right? And if you want to talk like West Coast, East Coast investors, it's got to be audacious. It's got to be just totally, out of this world. Why would anyone do that? Because that's what they like to invest in.
Well, here's to audacious.
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.